Okay, so what we've done so far is just installed Knex with npm install Knex right here. In addition to the other things that we need, that we usually use to build our express APIs.env for our environment variables, PG for the Postgres client. And then once we have installed Knex, we can say npm Knex init to initialize the use of the library in our application. And all it does is create a Knex file.js, which looks a whole lot like the config file from Sequelize. So we can make some changes to this file here that look like whatever we want them to look like. So for example, in this case, I'll be making a PostgreSQL database, and I will connect to it locally. And I could just put the connection string here to my local version. We can say the address here by doing this. And then so it's the protocol, which is the database, and then the host name / the database name. In our case, let's call it stream library API. No. Management. Stream library, the final answer. We'll call it stream library. That database is not connected yet. I don't know if in Sequelize, in Knex, you can create the database using Sequelize. I know for sure we all remember that you can do that using Sequelize, but I'm sure there's a way to do that. So that will be the name of our database. We haven't created it yet. You can see that there's also this staging block here. That's just a choice name, a choice there. And there's also a production. When we deploy it, we will connect via the same way. We'll do a URL to the database we deployed to. Maybe we'll use render to do that. But for now, since we're doing local development, I'm just going to put the connection string right here, save it, and move on. All right. So far, so good, I think. Pretty straightforward stuff. Now, I want to create the libraries table, right? Because I need to store the libraries. And the libraries table is really not going to have much in it. It's going to have just a name, and it will default to an ID, I guess. So let's do that. So we'll say npx Knex migrate make, so the name of it, of the file, and press enter. You can see it tells you exactly what it's doing using the development environment, which makes sense because we're on the computer. Then it created a migration in our application in the migrations folder, and it follows the same pattern as Sequelize by putting a timestamp here. So that's May 27th, 2023 at 2:25 Greenwich Mean Time, which is accurate. It's 6 hours ahead of now. So let's check out what that gave us. A migrations directory and this right here. Okay. Cool. So as you can see, this is empty. These up and down methods here are empty. Okay. So what do we need to do here?
Need to make tables?
Yeah, but those tables got to have what?
Data?
Yeah, exactly. But the data's got to go where? In field. So for example, yes, you're right, Keith, this is going to represent the library table. So we can do that with the following. Knex.schema dot. You can see here we get a lot of options. Create table here, and then we could say the table name here, libraries, and then we pass. That's a function here. It says table. And then from there, we can move forward and say what we want to be in those tables. In other words, the fields of the table. So we can say table dot increments the ID, and that's going to be our primary key. So that's going to give us, this is like a serialized ID field. In other words, it's going to, by putting increments, it's going to, the database is going to keep track of the ID of the last one, just like we had in Sequelize. So then we want a name field, and it's going to be a string, and we're going to make it not nullable, which this means that we have to have name. It's also, I believe, text. Just you're able to have a longer value, but our library names probably won't be that long, so we'll just use string. And you can look in the documentation for what that means. You can see here adds a string column with an optional length defaulting to 255 characters. And then if we go and look at text, we can see adds a text column with optional text type and maybe long text, medium text. So it sort of it definitely depends on the database dialect that you're using as to how many characters each one of those gives you. But you can see here in the documentation that it's giving you all of the various options for the field data types. And that's good, right? So finally, we can type table.timestamps if we want a created at and updated at field for this table. I think that makes sense. Okay. So in the down portion of this migration, I'm going to say table libraries. This is in the event that we need to roll back this migration. Okay. Any questions? Or actually, I'll tell you what we did, then I'll say any questions. We just created the script, the create table libraries, and then the columns that we wanted it to have, which would be name, ID, obviously name, and created at and updated at. And now when we run this migration, that table should be put in the database.
Brandon, when you created the database, so it created this initial migration, which has not been run yet, right? It didn't run this to create the database. It just started you off with this.
Yeah, so this came out of me creating this migration. I actually have not created the database yet. All I did was create a migration. This is equivalent to, oh gosh, I've already forgotten the Sequelize stuff. Like whatever you do to make migration in Sequelize. And then we add these things here to declare how we want the table to be.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool. So let me try. Anybody else have any questions? Bet. Okay, so let me then try to run this migration and see what happens. EX connects. Migrate. Database. Error. Why? Database does not exist. No problem. It just creates a database. And nothing about the way we interface with the database and creating it changes. We're still going to use pSQL. We can still tap into it the same way. So I'm going to say, it's going to create that database using the Postgres, the PG the PGSQL commands here. Create DB stream library. Remember this? Library. Boom. So now it should be created. I should be able to say PSQL stream library. And there's nothing in it. We know that because we created it. So now when I migrate latest, and then I try to, you can see it told me that it used the development environment to run one migration. So now when I try to connect and list the relations, you can see that there's a libraries table. Now, of course, there's some other tables that came with it because Knex has to keep up with not only the migrations, but also since we have a serializable field, which is the ID, it's also going to keep up with which ID should be the next one for the libraries. So that's cool. Already connected to the database that fast. I don't think we've necessarily proven anything, any benefits or really differences from Sequelize just yet, but maybe soon. So far we've got one table. That's good, right? All right, cool. So I'll do it. Let's do it like a table at a time. So in other words, I'll create a table and then I'll create the routes for that, all the CRUD stuff for that table, and then we'll go back and do another table. Does that sound good? Amazing. All right, then. So I'm gonna, now that we have a database table, I'm gonna add a route. That way we get to see the full cycle of Knex sooner. Libraries.js. Okay. Here. And here. Require express. You remember. This will be a nice refresher for you guys getting into your projects next week. So shout out to you for coming. You'll be that much less stale on the API stuff. The actual Knex file. So in other words, we're giving this router file right here the ability to connect to the database. Okay. And then let's do a get for all of the libraries. In other words, we want to return when someone goes to /libraries, this should give them back all the libraries. You understand? Let's see. And actually, let's refactor this right here because we don't need every router to actually be reaching into the Knex file. We want to actually create like a config file. So stand by. So I'll touch a bb.js. That's a choice, the name. You call it config. You could have a config folder where you put the Knex file in the database. It's up to you. So in here, what I want to have is basically setting up Knex to use the appropriate block here for connection. In other words, when we're on the computer, like locally, it should use development. When we get to production, it should use production. And this is all based on the value of the node env environment variable. Okay. And if we don't have a value for that, we'll just default to development because most platforms as a service deployment platforms are going to, when they detect a node app, are going to make the node environment be production. So we're sort of depending on that to be the case. Now for the config, we're requiring the Knex file, and then we're going to pass in the environment. All this is when we require the Knex file, it returns to us, as you can see, module.exports an object. And then that object, instead of using dot notation, we're using bracket notation to select which value inside the object we want to use here. That's all that's happening on line 2. So when we are on the local computer, it'll use development. So we use that Postgres connection string. When we're in production, it will use the production block. If we're in a staging environment, it would use that block. Okay, so now we have Knex that we will import again. We're going to replace what we have in the other file. And then with our instance of Knex, we have to pass it a configuration object. Oh my God. Okay. So we do that, and then we say module.exports equals Knex. All right. So that's kind of nuts. I feel you. But all it means is that instead of requiring the Knex file here, we could just do all of the work in DB. Or excuse me, inherit all of the work from the DB. This gives this router file access to the database. I feel there's a lot going on there, but I wonder if you feel the same. Do you have questions? All right, good. You got it. Don't worry. All right, let's write some code then. I'm going to close this, and we will do this. Yeah, we'll have router.get, and then when we go to slash, because remember this is a router, so we're already at slash libraries, even though we have not configured that just yet. What we want to do here is we can handle this a lot of ways. In my case, or in this case right now, I'm going to use an arrow function, handling request, response, and then any middleware. That's what the next does. So now here's the Knex part that's about to go now. Ready? Knex. So this is what would replace, oh gosh, I can't even remember the Sequelize syntax. It's like, I forgot. Delete that from my brain. But let me show you an example. Of what this is replacing, in case you too forgot how to deal with any of the Sequelize stuff. Cool. So basically, what we're doing here, stand by, is like this. So you can see that we have the get here. Forget about authentication. We're not going to do authentication on this app today, but what we are doing is basically replacing this code right here. Obviously, it's not going to be baskets. It'll be libraries in this case. Okay. So let's see how it looks. I think, still so far, I think Sequelize is winning on like cleanliness of the code. This is nice because I just think like, okay, find all the baskets. Cool. But it is sort of an abstraction from actual SQL. Maybe I'm interested to hear what y'all's thoughts are about how this happens. So we say Knex and we pass the table as a string that we want to connect to. We say dot select. What do we want to select? Everything. And when we get something back, we're going to call it, and this is a choice, libraries. Notice that's not a conflict with what's on line 6 because one's a string and the other's not. Based on, we give back the libraries, meaning the data that comes back from this selection. That's what that represents. And then if there's errors, we'll pass those errors on to some error handling middleware that we will write here in a second. And that should get us back libraries. Let's see though if it works. Actually, I haven't proven it. Let's start up the app, and then we'll make a request. We know that we did not have libraries at the moment. I need to change my little script here. I don't have to be started and restopping. I'll say node mon document. Cool. So I'll say npm run dev. Tab first, actually. npm run dev. Great. So at localhost 3000, we should have a welcome to Express, and then localhost 3000 slash. Serious? Localhost 3000 slash libraries. Can I get libraries? Oh yeah, good. Error. Can I get libraries? Why not? Anybody? Cannot get libraries. This doesn't have anything to do with Knex.
No data in the library.
Nope, that doesn't have it. That doesn't matter. It's just saying I can't. It's saying I cannot make a GET request to slash libraries. The app itself.
Okay.
Had some in the chat. AJ said, "Can you repeat why the same name doesn't conflict?" Yes, I'll come back to that. Why can I not get libraries? Did you set up GET? GIT GET has nothing to do with this GET, but yes, I do have GET. I have made a GET repository. Cannot get libraries. Port. Well, port's working because localhost 3000 is there. Good to go, no problem. And we can see that welcome to Express. Good to go. True. Yeah. Cannot get libraries. So let's start with this. Cannot get libraries. So we've written a handler for route no get request. Getting closer, AJ. That's correct. Well, if you're saying we did not make a GET request, then we actually did. Everything from a browser by default is a GET request unless it's configured to change method. So that's the default method. We're making a GET request, no problem. But it's the application cannot handle GET requests at slash libraries. Why not? Why not? I'll open this file. Why not? Anybody? Why not? Why can I not get slash libraries?
It's not on there. You didn't link it.
All right, nice. Walk me through it, AJ. You're on mute.
Don't you have to still link the library to like on this like var?
Yeah, you're correct. Walk me through it. Give me a line number. I'll start typing.
8.
All right, good. What should I do? Replace here.
Replace users with library.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly.
And then for the routes, like what user is, you just put libraries.
I really struggle typing library. I always type library. I used to have a problem saying it. I can't type it. It's okay. I prefer that over the alternative. Yeah, it's just exactly right. The error was cannot get libraries. That's because even though we wrote the router to handle requests, we did not wire up the app to be able to handle requests at that URL. So good. So now let's try it again, and we should see nothing. Any refuse to connect. Get out of here. Oh, it crashed. Okay, good. We love that. It requires a middleware function, but gotta stand by. Got some errors. We love that. Okay, let's see. I think it may be because I'm passing on the error to the next middleware, but I don't have a middleware handler. So let me just do this for a second. I'll just console error the error. Server. Nice. Yes. Oh, wow. Gotta export it. Classic. Module.exports. The router. Okay, turn it back up. Starting. Refresh. Boom. There we go. No libraries in the database as expected because there are no libraries in the database. That makes sense, right? Cool. Then let's do some more things. Does anybody have questions? Anybody see what we did? We just did our first cycle of going from database to Express and returning back some data. All right. What if we wanted to get a particular library by its ID? Then we could do a very similar thing. I think this fixed now. Okay. Router.get. I want to say :ID. And then I'll say request response next. Okay, I will say const. Now I'll go ahead and pull out the ID from the params or the request. Okay. Then I will say Knex libraries dot select. There. The ID. And this is assuming that it where the ID is that thing. That's the default, in other words. In the event that we have two libraries with the same ID, which is not possible, we'll just bring back the first one. That's fine. And then we'll do the same then handling as above, except we'll just call it library. Just to be clearer. And then AJ, earlier you asked about how come there's not a naming conflict. It's because these are different things. This is a string, libraries, and then this is a choice of, this is a parameter in a function. So right here we have a function definition, and the argument that's being used at the time of invocation is when this return comes back. So the value of whatever returns from Knex.select is going to be passed as the libraries to this then handler. Therefore, this libraries and this libraries is the same reference. So there's no conflicts because it is the same thing. But in this case, there's no conflict because they're actually different things. This is a string, and that's an object. That makes sense? Nice. Okay, so here's how we would get a library by its ID right here in Knex. And to compare that to freaking Sequelize, we can see that, I don't know if lines of code is the correct metric to compare it by, but it's more, for me, it's more like the mental model. Like, how can you think about it? What is being, abstracted away from you? And to me, I like this because it says, okay, I'm using Knex to connect to the libraries table, using the select function, selecting everything where the ID is equal to this ID. That's what's happening here. It's not magic. This is the same as saying where ID colon ID. But since the thing we want to check for is the same as the param name, we could just say ID like that. Bring back the first one and then return the response. What do you think? No thoughts. It's okay. Keeps into it. All right, boom. Okay, so then let's move on, because I think the real sauce, as they say, is the joining of stuff. So in other words, I want to bring back a library and all the shelves that it has. Or like, I want to bring back a shelf and all the books that it has in one request. Know what I'm saying? All right, cool. So then let's make the shelves table, and then we'll seed some data so we can see what's going on. Oh, itching. All right, so I'm going to make the shelves table and then also the shelves routes. And then after that, I'll make the, I'll go back to the libraries router and make an endpoint that is like /library/1/shelves. In other words, all the shelves at library number 1. Good. All right, cool. So the seeding of the table is going to be probably pretty frustrating, just because of making sure you have all the right data. Anyhow, let's create a new migration using the Knex CLI. That's what's happening when I do npx Knex. I'm using the Knex command line interface. You could also do this programmatically. In other words, you could have a script, like a JavaScript file, to actually do the migrations, to create migrations too. But the CLI is nice. I'm making shelves right now. And a shelf is going to contain, obviously, an ID as well, a genre, like we know. And then it should also have a library ID. That's a foreign key back to the library that it's on. So we'll think about that as we as this happens. Oh, that was so fast. It's like when somebody at a restaurant, it's like, what do you want? Like, oh, you go first. And they say, okay, I'll have the ribs. That didn't give me any time to think. It's all right. So we've got our new migration here. And inside of here. So we'll create the table. And again, maybe this looks crazy to you, but if you break it down to its composite parts, you'll see that it's just functions that are returning the invocation of methods. Nothing that you have not seen before. But your amygdala has to do something. So it says, this is a threat to your competency, but it's not. It's just anything. And this time I'll do an arrow function. That way we can see that, there's nothing new under the sun. Okay. And in this case, do the same thing, table.increments ID, and you could change, the default is ID, but you could change this to do whatever you want, the primary key. In other words, we can make any field the primary key. Table.integer. In this case, this is going to be the library ID. You might remember in Sequelize when I said that the underscore sometimes cause bugs. I do not believe that bug exists in Knex, so you're good to go. Unsigned, and then not nullable. So let's look up what this unsigned does in Knex. I know some of you are wondering. Specifies an integer as unsigned. So what that means in database terms, I think it's got a lot to do with the uniqueness. I don't know. This is definitely a curiosity rabbit hole. Right? Yeah, that's not really helpful, is it? In any case, we'll make it so we must have a library ID. In other words, you can't have a shelf without a library. It can just be out here running libraries. And I have a typo here. There we go. And now I'll create the genre. And string makes sense for genre because don't need to be super long. 255 characters should cover it for a genre. Can't have a shelf without a genre either, so we'll make that not nullable, and we'll also do the timestamps. These two values here, true, true, is whether or not, if both are true, it means we want to have a created at and an updated at field. If we just do true, it will just do created at. If we do true, false, it'll do created at, but not updated at for the fields. With the updated at, it's helpful because then you can sort by recently updated in the server response or in the client as well. Something in the chat. Okay, okay, good. All right, so now what do we need to do now? You think this table is slightly different from the libraries table. In what way? How is this table different from the libraries table? Anyone? Anybody? Anybody? Are y'all out there? Am I muted? Can you hear me? Hello? Do. He thought it was just gonna be a stream where I'm just talking. LOL. All right. Well, in the meantime, we can wish Dee a happy birthday. It's her birthday. I just found out on LinkedIn. Yeah. Okay, so we're here. So we're awake. There we go. Boom. Shut off the D. All right, good. So now that I know that your computers work, maybe it's the mics. I don't know. How is this table different from the libraries table? Here's the schema for the libraries table. Okay. And here's the shelves table. I told you that you cannot have a shelf without a library. In other words, the shelf must be connected to the library somehow, some way. How do you do that? Gerald, how is this table different from the libraries table? Gerald Pinkins. IDK. What DYK? Do you have a mic? Are you able to unmute? Let's think out loud.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm thinking I'm looking at it.
Okay, so let's talk about what do you know?
No.
You don't know what you know. Said what?
I don't know what I don't know.
That I believe, and that makes sense. But what do you know about the libraries table? You must have some awareness, like, okay, we've been doing this, has an ID and a name and timestamp table, beautiful. But then when we create the shelves table, I told you that the shelves must have a reference. The shelves have to belong to a library. They can't just be out here. You can't just have shelves without a library, right? You agree with that concept?
Yeah.
All right. So how do we represent that on a database? On a database.
Blank.
Okay. So what is this library ID? What does that mean?
It's the ID for the library.
Okay, good. So how do we reference that table?
Library ID.
Good. We have it there. But we just, by typing library ID, that's just a name. There's like a certain thing we have to do to make it connect to the actual table.
It'll be the what you have in the parameter there, the KNEX, that library ID.
Library ID. Well, yeah, we have to make a reference to this library ID. This doesn't mean anything. It's not connected to the table at the time. So what we need, the actual implementation we need right now is a foreign key. We need to create a foreign key for the library. So we could say table.foreign, and we're declaring that the foreign key is library ID, and it references the ID in the table libraries. So now what we have is a reference to the libraries table, particularly the ID column from this table's library ID. So when we run the migrations, that's going to create this correct schema that we need. In other words, each shelf will have its own library that is connected to through the library ID, which will reference the ID in the libraries table.
Brent. So
Yeah.
like if you're doing like a mock interview and you're doing the databases and stuff like that, should you also be commenting, like leaving comments, your notes and stuff in there?
I don't know. I don't know about should. If it's a live interview, I think I'd prefer you to just be talking about it. But if it's
It's like virtual live, but they don't really see anything, right?
I don't know. If they can hear you, I would be talking about it. I would talk about it over comments. I'm not anti-comment. I just think that it's another thing to possibly overthink, like what the comment should be. So I would just be like super verbal about, like, pretend like pretend like you're on a stream and nobody's responding to you, and you keep asking questions over and over. I would do that and just be like relentless about still talking, even though you may not be getting the feedback you want. That makes sense?
Gotcha.
Word. So then, in this case, we need to return next.schema.drop table shelves. Okay, so now let's create the shelves table with the migration. Any questions right now? Amazing. So we'll say npx Knex migrate latest to run one migrations. And now you can see if we connect to here, we now have a shelves table, and then we can see all the stuff. So we can see, I think we can do this. Yeah, there we go. It tells us all the details about shelves. It has an ID, a library ID, a Jean, created at and updated at. Cool. And then it also, we have some foreign key constraints. So shelves library ID foreign key is library ID, which references the ID in the libraries table. So this is the actual SQL that creates the stuff that we had connects to. That's cool, right? It's fine. It's fine. Listen, it's fine. Don't worry. So I'm going to create the shelves route right now, and then I'll do the associations. What I like is in both of these cases, the plural version of the individual thing is not just adding an S, you know? You gotta change the spelling. Okay, so let's copy the boilerplate because a lot of these things aren't gonna change. Boom, so we're still connecting, beautiful. And then in this case, it is still pretty much the same, which you just change the word shelves to library. You can say request response next. And let's do our function. Have connect to the shelves table. And then, excuse me, select everything. It also would work if you just do connects.shelves. The default is select. So it's a really explicit way to connect. And then we'll say shelves as the data response, and we'll respond with all of them. And then in the event that there's an error, we'll catch it and hand it on to the error handling middleware that we will send, right? And we'll module.exports equals router. Okay. Now we should be able to say /shelves, but first we need to do what? How we make shelves work.
Add the route.
Yeah, add the route, exactly. So we'll do this. We'll say okay. And then we'll go boom. And where there's libraries, we'll say shelves. All right, and now let me go here and change this to shelves. Good. An empty response is not an error. It makes sense since we don't have any data in there. So that's good. That's good news. We're now able to read from the DB. So let's actually check the output. If we had it in debug mode, it would show us the actual SQL that's being run. So that could be cool. I actually like this output because it's a little bit less messy by default than Sequelize, but I think you can get it to where it shows the SQL. Give me a second. Yeah, there we go. I think we just do this. Now when we run queries, it should tell us the actual SQL query that gets run, which is nice. Yeah, see, so now it did a select star from shelves right there. It's nice. Okay, any questions right now before I show you this join? Okay, cool. I think I'm close to being done to the point where we've, like proven the point. The rest is just rinse and repeat on these things. The core concepts are the same: migrations, connection to the database, and running migrations.
What's the command I guess you use to see the past?
See the what?
What's the command that you use? Like if you wanted to see all the previous things you've done to this database.
What do you mean? Like, give me an example.
What it just showed you, like
This?
where it pulled from. Is there a way to pull like all of them? Say you skipped a step, or you think you skipped a step. I'm trying to think.
Give me an example. What you mean? Skip the step doing what? Like how to create the migrations? Are you talking about in order to build a use Knex to build an app, or?
Yeah, like you say you exit out the database and you just forgot the last thing that you did, like on there. I can't think of what
The last thing you did should. So with Knex, if you're using Knex or Sequelize or any other database management system, then it should be the record of your interactions with the database. In other words, these migrations files should contain the last thing you did with the database. And if you want to know whether or not any of these migrations have been run, then what you can do is make a query to the migrations table. So we can say like from there, and then we want to say like select star from Knex migrations. We can see what migration files have already been run, but it doesn't matter so much because if the table exists, it's not going to be able to be created again. It'll just tell you that table already exists. But if you want to avoid that, you can say create table if not exists. Problem is that by me modifying this migrations file right now, it's not going to make a difference because these migrations have already been run. If I need to modify the table, I need to make a new migration. There. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. So I think like the problem was that I needed to make a new migration, but I couldn't figure out if I had already made the new migration and I put in the code wrong. I didn't have the star.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Okie dokie. So now that we've got shelves and we've got libraries, let's connect the two. You know, what if you wanted to get all of these shelves on the library? So then let's go to the libraries router. And we can say up here, router.get. This is library /3/shelves, for example. We would turn me, and then we'll still grab the ID. And we'll say select star, where now you'll see that since we don't have this library ID in the param, we have to explicitly say like where the library ID is equal to. That's what this says. Is equal to the ID from the params, which since we're in the libraries router, the implication following rest is that it's like library / the library ID. So for the first library, this would be 1. And then we're selecting shelves where the library ID on that table is 1. Since we set up a foreign key already, that's how that should work. Select the shelves. We say response.json. So this gives us back all the shelves just for library. And now we should be able to connect and do that. And then it'll show us the query. So let's say libraries good /1/shelves. And there should be nothing because we don't have any data. But now we can see that this query is select star from shelves where library ID equals blah, because you have a foreign key. Good. Okay. Stand by. Are there any questions right now? No? Yes? No? Yes? No. AJ has no questions. Okay. What are we thinking compared to Sequelize? Do we feel like same? Do we feel like this is lighter? What are your thoughts on Knex.js compared to Sequelize so far?
I mean, probably I guess a little bit easier. So there's no models, right? Like, so the model, the equivalent of models in Knex is in the migration. Is that accurate?
There really are no models at all. Because this is just a query builder. Sequelize, it does the queries and creates the models. If we want to use, what is it? Bookshelf.js.org. If we want to use, if we want to have models, we could use a library like Bookshelf.js. So let's see. Let me show you. Yeah, so we've done this. We just haven't done that yet. Good. We already did that. So now using Bookshelf, we could do something like const user equals bookshelf.model. And it's called user. Going forward, we could reference it using the word user. Let me show you an example here. Good. So then we could say something like user.fetch with the related post tags, blah, blah, blah. I don't love it. But I could see how somebody might be like, oh yeah, this makes it much easier because you just reference things by their name. But there is no equivalent of models in Knex.js because its only job is to write the queries, which is like, you can think of it as a little bit closer to SQL because we're just, in a sense, the only abstraction here is that this is just the equivalent of writing SQL.
Right. So like it removes those Sequelize methods for actually that replace SQL. Is that correct? Like,
yeah. So Bookshelf has those for sure. So like you can see here that there is, let's do like find by ID. You remember that? Or find by PK. Hold on. It's been a minute since I've used these. So yeah, model.fetch I think would give everything, right? But if we just need one, there we go. Book, new book, fetch. And then it's giving you the book where the ISBN equals 139, blah, blah, blah. We could do that in Knex. You just have to write the SQL. But we don't have this abstraction of being able to refer to it like this. It's really just like a developer experience upgrade, potentially, for some people that like that. So we're saying here where a book is a model that references the books method, has additions, which returns the relationship of saying like a book could have many additions. A book also has many chapters, but a book belongs to a genre. So going forward, we can say book.fetch with related genre and additions, which should return to us all the books plus their genres and additions as one big thing, which is nice.
Okay.
It just saves us from having to write join queries.
So like in Knex, like, okay, I see where the SQL, you're doing select star.
Yeah.
And but you would get into like potentially select star from include like the actual like SQL potentially.
Yes.
Okay.
And you can also do just like in Sequelize, not even potentially, almost inevitably. You could say, I think it's like Knex.raw or something, or maybe Knex. Let's look at the documentation. There's no need to guess. Here. Yeah, there we go. So select star from users. And if you need to do something that you don't want to use the Knex API for, you could pass in raw SQL right here. So Knex.raw and then actually pass that in. And then do it like that.
And you'd still be protected from SQL injections?
Yeah, because all that users will be passing in is, well, not by default. You have to, like handle that. Right. But all that users would pass in would probably be, SQL strings. And then you can see that this is handling. If there would be some collusion taking place if you intercepted a string and passed it into Knex.raw. You see what I mean? Like you'd have to know that and then by that point, like somebody's already
familiar with your,
and yeah, you have a bad actor already on your team. So then you're not protected from that, but you can still make it. It is still the case that users by default, unless you directly pass the string, would be able to, be protected from having those things. Okay, so how we feeling? I've got this mostly like the full version up on GitHub. Where we have to do like a little bit of joining, but not really. It's really just leveraging the foreign key that we have. Okay, any other questions with Knex? Right here. I told you this would be a little bit of a shorter one because I feel like we've proven the concept, but I wonder if anybody, when would you use Knex over Sequelize? It's really just a choice. I don't think they're solving the same problem, except for Sequelize has models. If I had a database that was just data, and by that I mean like it didn't need to represent. So we have libraries, shelves, books. That lends itself to having a model. So I'd like to be able to say library where books are less than 10, for example, like the count of books. And then in that case, there really are models because the libraries are representative of something in the real world. But if you just have like, let's just say like one table with medical data in it or something, I would probably use something a lot less intense than Sequelize. Sequelize is intense because it's making assumptions that you need to, it's trying to replicate or emulate this package called Active Record in a framework called Rails that is written using Ruby. But all the time, you don't need that. Sometimes you just need to get access to the data via raw SQL queries. Or not raw SQL queries, but just SQL queries. And Knex gives you that option in a much more lightweight fashion. You can see we didn't have to do all of that much. Sequelize, I think, has a lot more going on. You got this Cedars file, which we didn't necessarily need. You can also see it in Knex. We just didn't do that today. Yeah. Another thing I don't love about Sequelize, yeah, here we go. Is it like maybe I don't need models? Know what I'm saying? Like maybe I don't need to reference things, like create these sort of associations. In other words, I can let the URL of the server of the API handle that. In other words, the model is set up to just handle that by default, but we could just write that in the query, in the endpoint rather. Yeah. So since we don't have models here, we get a lot more freedom. And I put that in quotes because it's like choice, and like no one makes you have to use models. We could still do straight up. I guess there's a way to do raw SQL, or I know there's a way to do raw SQL and Sequelize, but by default it comes with this idea of models, which Knex and Bookshelf have separated. So it's like Knex just writes the SQL queries. Bookshelf gives you the option of having these models that Sequelize gives you out of the box. So it's just, like I said, they're solving the same problem, but Knex plus Bookshelf equals the same full-throated functionality of Sequelize. But Knex alone just gives you SQL query building capabilities. Oh, there we go. All right. Any other questions? Would you like me to add to this and post it later using that Bookshelf library? Maybe create some models? Quaya says yes. AJ says yes. Everybody's going to say yes, right? What I think was going to happen there. Fine. I won't go to the jazz festival. I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Okay. Any other questions? We might end now on our little introduction to Knex, so that you could use this. You could use this in your projects if you'd like for next week. But you have to have no problem, Keith. You have to make sure everybody in your group is on board with doing this, because everybody's going to be. It's not like you'll be the Knex person. Everybody's got to be full stack. What's up, D?
I got a question in general about databases, because I know this is an area that I be having to look a lot of stuff up.
Yes.
I want to say I want to create a Jordan database for like Jordan 1 through Jordan 14. Is that 14 like AP, like 14 tables, or is that could they all be associated using their retro type?
No, to me that's one table. It's like shoes.
Yeah, but so like if I want to click on, I got a screen and I want to click on Jordan 1,
Yeah.
specifically to only see Jordan 1s, but is that still one table?
Well, so then when you're talking about screens, that's a different thing. It's not the case that a view on the UI has to be tied to a request to one table. In other words, if I go to like let's say if I go to my LinkedIn, right?
Mhm.
There's more than one don't put my messages up, chill out. There's more than one table that's being accessed here, even though this is one view.
True. Mm-hmm.
Right. So far, maybe we have only done like a page per view. That's kind of funny. We've only done like a page per, one table per view, most probably. But that's just because we're just learning. You don't have to just get access to one table when you are making a UI. Does that make sense? So if you just want to look at one shoe, it might be the case that you just hit like select star from sneaks where title or where brand is Jordan and edition is 14.
Okay.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that would just be one table, sneaks.
All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. What else? Okay, cool. Nice, quick, short intro to Knex.js. Maybe I'll add some models to it. You're welcome, AJ. A little bit later, and then post this up. I will give you the, which I think I've already given you this. I'll show you the, where does it exist? I think this is what I used to make Knex, to have Knex. Yeah, this is a complete version of what we just did. So I'll drop this in the chat here. Stream exclusive. Haven't even put this in Slack yet. So there's the full API using, by full I mean like all the CRUD endpoints. I've got delete on there and update as well. So like if you wanted to make a new library, or a new where is it? Yeah, new library, or update a specific library, or delete a specific library. There's that right there, and same is true for shelves as well, and books. Then I've also got here, get all the books for a specific shelf, which is exactly like freaking the shelves by library. All right, cool. So what other questions have you got? I'll probably update this maybe later, at some point this weekend before your project starts. Anything else? How can I help? Anything else? How can I help? Oh, good. Wonderful. Well, I can't hear. Maybe somebody said something, maybe not. In any case, I hope that you have a fantastic day. I'm going to stop the recording. Thank you for watching the recording.